This month marks the one-year anniversary since the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan, but this party will have no cake or food of any kind because the country is reportedly deep in a famine under the Taliban, with half of all citizens facing acute hunger. Trey Yingst reporting has been heartbreaking here. Females have predictably been forced out of schools and into child marriages. Domestic abuse and violence of all kinds that has skyrocketed. House Republicans are about to issue a scathing report accusing the Biden administration of having no plan for evacuating Americans or our Afghani allies and lying to the public about conditions on the ground. 1 year later, do we have any more clarity on how it all went so wrong? Joining me now, director of the Libertarian Institute and antiwar.com editorial director. He also wrote a book called Fool's Errand. You have to read it. It's all about Afghanistan. Scott Horton is back. So this is obviously your wheelhouse. A lot of people in the administration, they said, Trump gave us a bad exit deal. We honored it anyway because we're such good people. We had no idea that the government would crumble so quickly. You saw this coming 5 years ago. Why didn't they see what you saw?
Well, frankly, they must have. Biden was basically the least worst out of the entire Obama cabinet when they decided on the surge back in 2009. And he knew that it was a fool's errand back then. So this is really the major reason for the catastrophe. If they had stuck with Donald Trump's deadline of May the 1st, that's essentially the start of the fighting season. So they would have had what they called in Vietnam that decent interval before the government completely fell apart. But Biden kicked the can down the road until September, but the Taliban didn't delay their timetable for going ahead and launching their final offensive to take over the country. And so the whole thing all fell apart right on his watch. And then that led to the catastrophe of the fall of the civilian government while the Taliban was walking right into Kabul, while they'd already given over the Bagram air base to the Afghan army, which then dissolved and handed it over to the Taliban. And of course, all of that equipment that fell into the hands of the Taliban. But look at the problem Biden was in. He would have had to tell the truth at the beginning. As soon as he was sworn into office, he would have had to face down all of his generals, the entire government, and all the Republicans and Democrats and the media and everyone. And he would have had to say, listen, the government we built in Kabul and its army are a joke, a Potemkin village. After 20 years, we lost. We failed, and we have to get everybody out of there now carefully before everything goes to hell. Now, he would have been accused of being the cause of the fall of the government for doing that, but that was just the truth. The Afghan National Army, and instead he lied and said, the reason we can leave is because we did such a great job building a government there, and we did such a great job building this 300,000-man army, so we won. So that's why we can leave. But that was a lie. And then based on that lie, they extended the policy of staying until September, which is what led to the catastrophe. So,
but he also had the forced timeline. Oh, yeah. Go ahead, please. I want you to finish your thoughts.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say, because the overall point and the most important point is that Trump and Biden were right, that this war was lost. And, David Petraeus has some 6,000 word thing in The Atlantic about how this is everybody's fault but his, even though he was the one who promised he was going to win this war by July 2011, and he did not do that. And nowhere in that article does he address the fact that the Afghan government was a joke and had no support, or the fact that if we had broken the ceasefire deal and stayed, that we'd had to go back to war against the Taliban, and that would have meant we would have had to escalate tens of thousands more soldiers and Marines back into the country so they could continue to lose the war for another 10 years. And they just won't even address those arguments because they know they have no argument against them.
All right, we only have about 30 seconds, but you brought this up time and time again. Obviously, we ended up negotiating with the Taliban in the end. Why didn't we do that in the beginning? It would have saved, as you have pointed out, the lives of 1 million innocent civilians and probably $1 trillion.
I'll tell you what, it's all in Bob Woodward's book, Bush at War, because he got the notes from the National Security Council minutes. It's all there in the plain words of Bush and Cheney and Rumsfeld and Wolfowitz. They wanted to take the war not to al-Qaeda, but to the Taliban and then to Saddam Hussein in Iraq. And they didn't want to kill bin Laden at Tora Bora. They didn't want, as Rumsfeld said, for the war to end too quickly. Just the same way they talk about Ukraine now. We don't want the war to end too quickly. We want the American people to understand this war is going to go on in time and place throughout the Middle East. Now, here we are 20 years later, $10 trillion spent, 2 million dead, including 7,000 Americans, 30,000 American soldier suicides, and absolutely nothing to show for it whatsoever. And then what do they say, Kenny? They go, that's why we have to pour all these arms into Ukraine, so that we can redeem ourselves for 20 years of failure in the Middle East.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
Absolutely unacceptable. Yep. Scott Horton, love to talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you.